And we are live. Welcome back, everyone. I am your host, Jeremy Como. Today with us, we have the illustrious Jon Osborne, and he has a brand new book out, and we want to celebrate that. But before we do, let's pay the bills. This show, Inside CKP, is brought to you by none other than Chris Kennedy Publishing. You can find all your literary needs on chriskennedypublishing.com. We're both wearing the gear. Of course, you can buy this gear there. And to support this show as well as Chris Kennedy Publishing, go to their Patreon. You get loads of extra stuff by becoming a member. There's the CKP Confidential and all kinds of other neat things that you can get if you join the Patreon, of course, and you can support a lot. Publishing a lot more great books like the one we're going to talk about today. Of course, in addition to chriskennedypublishing.com, you can find all the books that they offer on Amazon here. And to keep up with all the shenanigans, you can go on Chris Kennedy Publishing's Facebook account. And of course, the fan page is the factory floor where a lot of the shenanigans happen. Jon, before we go too far, let's tell people where they can find you.
All right. Well, a lot of it's pretty easy. I am Jon R. Osborne. So on Facebook, you can find me under Jon R. Osborne. Instagram, Jon R. Osborne. But Twitter throws you for a loop. It's at Druid Oz because, well, I started that way before I started writing. But even back then, I was into the whole Celtic mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a druid then. So.
All right, and don't forget your website. Do you have?
Yeah, my website, jonrosborne.com.
And do you have a newsletter on that one, Jon?
Yes, there's a thing on there you can sign up for my newsletter.
All right, cool. All right, people, if you want to know what the latest and greatest is with Jon, sign up for that newsletter. And I say this every episode. You can sign up for the newsletter at chriskennedypublishing.com. You get first news on a lot of stuff, and you can even become a pre-reader for some things. And it's just a lot of good content and and you get free stuff too, so that's nice. Let's see. All right, so we are here to celebrate the release of, let me pull it up. Wrong one. There we go. The release of Hunting the Hart. I love these covers. I was telling Jon before we came on. These are some of the best covers, especially for urban fantasy. And I've enjoyed playing with them for making promos and stuff like that. So, Jon, why don't you tell us about the series, tell us about the artwork, whatever you want to talk about.
All right. Well, the series is the Milesian Accords, and it comes from the old Irish invasion myth. It's called Le Borgabala Erin. And in there, the premise was that there were 7 invasions of Ireland that ended with the fairy folk, the Tuatha De Danann, being driven out of the world of man by the Milesians, who were the descendants of Noah, so from the Abrahamic religions. And so I took that idea. I'm like, so what if there was an opportunity for a rematch?
Mm-hmm.
And so in the Milesian Accords, they settled the original fight with a battle of champions. The fairy folk, thinking they were clever, decided to enter as a champion. Dragon, after all, what says Celtic better than a dragon, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, the Avramites, they entered a warrior named Gawargix, who would later be known as Saint George.
Oh, okay.
So, needless to say, that fight didn't go well for the fairy folk. They lost, and they were exiled from the world of man. And with their departure, magic faded from the land, and they basically went into the realm of myths and memories. However, as I said, there was a provision for a rematch. You fast forward to modern day, and a single mother and a small town loner have supernatural delegations show up on their doorstep saying, hey, we need your help to bring magic back to the world. And the more they learn, they discover that not only do they have a mystic heritage, they also have a tangled past.
Oh. So what are your the names of your two lead characters?
So Erin Donnelly, who is the champion, she's descended from Cuchulainn, Irish warrior of myth, and he's kind of like the ancient Irish Captain America, except with some of the Hulk thrown in, because his big thing is the whole frenzy thing.
Mm-hmm.
He just basically freaks out, gets super strong. He's super badass. The other one is Liam Knox, who is descended from the Druid Cathbad. And in fact, when they show up on his doorstep and they explain things to him, he's like, well, aren't I a little old for the whole hero's journey thing? And they're like, oh, no, you're not the hero. You're like the side guy. You're like Merlin or R2-D2 or something. It kind of takes the wind out of his sails because, it turns out that Aaron is the champion.
Oh, yeah.
However,
sorry.
However, obviously the Avramites really don't want to lose the rematch, but there's certain rules they got to follow. They can't just send an assassin to off the champion or druid or anything like that. They have to be kind of shady, and so it starts this whole cat and mouse game where they're trying to find Liam and Aaron to find a way to coerce them into not going through the challenge. Meanwhile, there's a third party, and no one knows what his game is. His name is Iblis, and any comparisons between him and a Lucifer figure is probably a little bit on. But Iblis has his own agenda, and he's trying to find them to leverage things his way.
Very cool. Very cool. So can you tell us, without giving away too much, how'd you come up with these ideas? How did you develop the characters, all that good stuff?
So, well, as I said, the basis of the story came from that Irish myth, which always fascinated me. And then I was driving up to my parents' house because my stepfather passed away, and my mother just passed away a few months before. And so basically every weekend I was driving up to their house to handle the estate. So I'd finish work on Friday, jump in the car, drive up to Chicagoland, do stuff up there all weekend, drive home. So I spent a lot of time driving back and forth in that same road, which gave me a lot of time in my head. And I was thinking about the whole rematch idea and stuff like that. And just the first scene in the book with Liam in the bookstore hit me. And, from there, I just started building the rest of the story out. When I say rest of the story, I didn't actually outline it. It's like I came up with the characters and stuff like that, and how I want things to kind of progress. And I also knew how I wanted it to end. The middle part was the fuzzy part. And, this was my first book. And I'm sure you've heard, after talking to all these authors, you've heard of pantsers versus plotters, right? Well, I fall heavily into the pantsing camp. And I like to say pantsing is how my first book turned into a trilogy. Because book 2 was supposed to be a training montage. And as I was writing it, my friends, especially Mark Wander, who's an old friend of mine, and he helped me. He actually introduced me to Chris and helped me get into the whole writing game. He's like, dude, just split it up. You're not George R. Martin. You can't have this enormous book for your first book. And I'm like, I guess I could split it. And someone else says, it's a trilogy. No, it's not a trilogy. And it was a trilogy. But then I realized that I had a lot more space to give Erin, some room to grow and some more, meat on her story, as opposed to us starting off and, going right to her being the champion and just having a training montage in the middle. And when that opened up, that gave me a lot more room to play with, let me flesh out her story, the story of the people that she deals with. Also characters that were just kind of like a drop-in pop-ins, became favorites and took on a much bigger role. And some of those favorite characters that we didn't get to see in book 4 returned for book 5.
That's awesome. I know. I love that, where you think you're putting in a throwaway character and they become a pivotal role in the whole story, which is pretty nice. And I love the fact that you're pulling from mythology and put it in a contemporary. I love urban fantasy. Love it. And so that kind of, and then the what if this and what if that, all that appeals to me. So I love these kinds of stories. So uh, when did you start writing, and how did you know you wanted to become a writer, and when did you first get published?
Oh, well, let's see. When I first started writing, I started dabbling with it back when I was in high school. Wrote my first book with a couple of my friends when I was in college. Although I did the bulk of the actual writing part of it, I was on a trip overseas. Um, and this was back in the day where we were just discovering that we could use computers for word processing. And yeah, that first book was god awful and will never see the light of day. I'm not even sure uh, there probably isn't a full printout of it because about half of it is a handwritten manuscript, half of it was in a big floppy disk. So yeah, the world will be protected from that.
Yes, boys and girls who are watching this, floppy disk is what we used to use to store data on.
Yeah, that was the hot thing after we progressed from cassette tapes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the other side of that coin is that ever since I was about 13, I played Dungeons and Dragons, and I was a dungeon master. And so part of being a dungeon master is being a world builder and a storyteller. Um, it also acclimates you to the notion that the characters in your stories will not do what you want. Um, but yeah, it was a creative outlet for me. And I was a journalism major in college, so I had the kind of the writing bug. And I guess I was okay at it because I got a scholarship for it and all that stuff. But then once I got out of college, I didn't really do anything with it. I got out of college, got a job, and life went on.
Mm-hmm.
I still played Dungeons and Dragons and games like it, but I really didn't have the time to do any serious writing. And I like would dabble a couple places, like where I would start a couple of chapters and just would lose interest in it because something came up, and really it was back in conjunction, I want to say 6-ish years ago,
Mm-hmm.
where Mark was there and Chris Kennedy was there. And this is where I first met Chris Kennedy. Mark introduced us. And in fact, this is the one where Mark and Chris struck up the agreement for the Four Horsemen universe. Because Mark pitched it to him the year before, and Chris didn't have time on his schedule for it. And then that year, Chris was like, "Well, okay, let me see what you got." And I guess he stayed up most of the night reading it. And I ran into him at breakfast, and as part of breakfast, I pitched him my story idea, and he's like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." Yeah, that was it. And he also told me what he was going to do to Mark with the whole I got bad news for you.
Mm-hmm.
That he wanted to write in it instead of just publish it. But yeah, so that's where I pitched my story idea to Chris. And at that time, he really didn't do much with fantasy. He was, what publishing he was doing was mostly science fiction. He had a few fantasy books out, but then as the Four Horsemen came out, we had the first anthology, Fistful of Credits. And I was at that point, I was actually working on writing the book, but I wasn't done with it. I was kind of struggling with it. And Mark was like, "Well, okay, we've got this anthology coming out of short stories." He said, "You can do a short story. It's 8,000 words. You can knock that out." And he said, "Chris has said that he will take a look at it. There's no guarantees about getting published or anything, but he will read it." And for me, I thought, well, if nothing else, that's an opportunity to get my work in front of a publisher. So even if it doesn't get printed, I could get some professional feedback. It's a good opportunity for me. And I turned in the first Bjorn's Berserker story, and Chris and I met at LibertyCon, and he said, "Okay, if your book's as good as your story, I'll publish it." And that's how I got my start.
That's awesome. Speaking of anthologies, we're here to talk about your latest fantasy novel, but he's been in a few anthologies. So if you want to go check them out, here they are. Go check. You can find all these on Jon's website as well as ChrisKennedyPublishing.com, and tons of great stories in these. Let's see, are these all Four Horsemen?
Well, those are probably most of the Four Horsemen anthologies. There might be one or two missing. I'm not sure, that's pretty close to all of them. But I'm also in several of the CKP fantasy anthologies.
Mhm.
I'm in a couple of salvage title anthologies. I'm in a couple of Fallen World anthologies. Because, when you're a writer and someone says, hey, do you want to write my world? If you can at all manage it, you say yes.
Sir, yes, sir. Or ma'am. Let's see. And you've also got some Four Horsemen novels out there.
That's right. The Bjorn's Berserker stories. So, When the Axe Falls, that picks up shortly after my short stories, the first two. And it's the characters that were introduced in those. And the first one's set in the Omega Wars and the invasion of Earth. The second one picks up in the Guild Wars, pretty much right on the heels almost of the first one. And then the third one is from the New Frontiers line, where we decided to do, they decided to do some YA books for the Four Horsemen universe. And I'm like, I could really flesh out Bjorn's backstory, because we see like flashbacks to it in the first story. But I'm like, there's a whole lot of meat I could add to those bones. And so I wrote Bjorn, which tells the story of how Bjorn Tovesen got his cybernetic arm, and dealing with his family and his father, Bjorn Tovesen II, and Bjorn's Berserkers. And then at some point, I'm going to get another book out, because I left off before Bjorn graduates high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next book, when I get it done, is going to be Graduation Day.
Well, the fans agree. We need more Bjorn.
There's also another. I've already got another Bjorn book, well, Bjorn's Berserkers book, not just Bjorn, in the works. It's about a quarter done already. That's in the Phoenix Initiative, and that one's called Bifrost Down. So if you've read Ally, it picks up from the end of Ally.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to give too much away there, but we can see some interesting dynamics, because it's the first time that the Berserkers really deal with things like Depic and stuff. And we also have some paradigm changes, like in some of the characters' relationships. For example, Whiskey, who has been the hothead in the Bjorn Berserkers books, well, she suddenly finds herself having to take on the role of being the responsible adult.
Well, Nick Steverson has entered the fray here, and Bjorn has to pay close attention to which hand the lotion goes on. What does that mean?
Well, he has one cybernetic arm.
Oh, okay. I
suspect he would only make that mistake once.
Yeah. I thought Nick was being gross again. Hold on.
A little.
All right. Let's see. And Charlene wants to have nothing to do with Nick. So, all right. So, well, so you write a little bit of everything,
right.
And
I should also say that Mark and I are also partway into another Phoenix Initiative book, Caveat Emptor.
Oh.
And this is the tie-in to Rules of Engagement, because part of that Kickstarter is one person bid for the right to basically name the unit or units put into this book.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark and I have been having fun with it, but we have to get the game out first. I think my plan is the next few months, go hard mode on the game, to try to get all the text wrapped up, so that way, because Joy Wandry is doing our layout and graphics and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she's already mocked up the first chapter, and I think she's already started the mock up of the second chapter, and the stuff she's doing looks great, but we need to have all the text done for her so that she can do her part.
And speaking of Joy, she was on the show last week, and we got to talk about her multi-talents. And so if you're interested in that, go check out that video. So Jon, do you have, I know it's like picking your children, but do you have a favorite genre that you write in, whether it's fantasy or science fiction or what have you?
Oh God, that's a hard one because as a kid I was big into D&D, but I was also big into Star Trek and Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I was really, I'm really schizophrenic on the subject, and I've been told that when I write, when I switch genres, I write in very different voices.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I literally had someone at a convention go, "Oh, wait, you're that Jon Osborne? You also write?" And I'm like, "Yeah, didn't the Jon R. Osborne give it away on the covers?" He's like, "Well, they don't sound the same."
Well, I've also heard your different voices at cons too.
Oh yeah,
John,
yeah.
for those of you who haven't had the pleasure, John takes on personas in
Well,
some of his panels.
it's part of being a dungeon master. It's almost like a default mode because you have all these characters in the world you're trying to paint for your players,
Mm.
and to be honest, the players, they get to have tons of fun playing their characters, and so NPCs are the DM's chance to ham it up a little bit.
Yeah, but for an introvert, John puts on a show. It's pretty fun. Is your last one? What was that last panel I saw you on where you brought all the props?
The alien archaeology panel.
Oh yes,
Dr. Dakota Smith and his very specific interests, we'll say.
yes, yes. A lot of them had to do with certain orifices. So you're split. You're a little schizophrenic on what your favorite is, and I get that. That's why there's always sci-fi and fantasy groups and things like that. Do you have a favorite character that you like to write?
I think Bjorn.
Mm-hmm.
Just because he is so much.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the whole getting to kind of be a ham. I mean, he's a big cybernetic, space Viking mercenary. Because when I had to come up with the idea of the whole, like, okay, what am I going to write for the Four Horsemen universe? Because you have these mercenaries tooling around this battle armor, fighting werewolves and giant praying mantis and spiders and stuff. I'm like, all right, how do you come up with something that's cool on that scale? And I'm like, space Vikings.
Yeah.
Like on the cover, you'll see like Bjorn has like his battle suit has a big ass battle axe.
Mm-hmm. Now, so let's get back to the topic at hand, which is your latest novel. If you had to do an elevator pitch for this novel or this novel as it fits in the series, what would that be?
Erin Donnelly has defeated the Dragon Slayer, but now in order to protect her cursed love, she has to face an invulnerable Viking who's been waiting 1,000 years for revenge.
Very nice. Very nice. And and we talked about this earlier. Are your books? And I'm an audiophile. I like audiobooks. Are your books in audio?
Yes. Well, the Milesian Accords books 1 through 4 are already out in audio, and Podium is working on book 5 now. They got the manuscript at the beginning of the month, and I don't have a release date for that yet, but I imagine it'll be soon.
Awesome. I love audiobooks. And I see you have an adult beverage with you there.
Oh yeah.
And you and you had a fun story about that.
Oh, in fact, okay, so this is Old Tom Horan whiskey, which it's an Irish whiskey. It's a pretty standard Irish whiskey, kind of like Jameson without the hype. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned it in the Milesian Accords, and a member of the family descended from Tom Horan wrote me because they'd read the book and they were just so tickled that their relative's whiskey was in this book they read.
That's great, because what are the chances that someone from that company would read the book from an indie publisher that has their whiskey in it? I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of stuff in there, like I'll make up brand names or change them, especially and Tom Horn. I just use a straight name because I figure, well, it's an obscure whiskey. No one's going to know it.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I was wrong.
Oh, Marisa agrees with you. She needs to put more real world whiskey into her books.
Well, if any whiskey companies or beer companies want to get their delicious beverages into books, just say.
Yeah, not a sponsor. Let's see. Let's see. Red breasted 15-year. Oh,
I
yeah.
think you're making a recommendation.
Yes, yes. At first, I thought he was being creepy again, but no, he's just recommending whiskey.
Yeah, like
uh, oh yeah, John knows a guy. All right. Well, so could I talk you into potentially reading something from your book?
all right. I could do the prologue. It's only a couple pages.
Okay.
Though, fair warning, I will fall into DM mode and be doing funny voices because, well, it's a
Oh
thing. There's a reason why I'm a writer and not an audiobook narrator, though.
no, go ahead, man. We
All right.
appreciate that.
So, Chapter 1, Necton. Hasn't 300 years been long enough? Necton held the arrow to his string, but did not draw. The pair froze in the shallow river, the man, short but bulky, ready to shield. The woman trailing him held up her skirt to her knees out of the rushing water. Unlike her companion, she had removed her hide boots and carried them draped over her shoulders. Lass, I see you twitch your fingers, I hear you utter a curse. I'll put an arrow in you in the space of a heartbeat. Stanger may bounce metal off his side, but I'm betting you're a bit more fragile. Hjortvata, Stanger spat. You've vexed my blood long enough. Heartwhite, I'll give you points for flair, Necton said. If your blood would quit trespassing her domain, the ladyship will not get two wits about you and yours. Your great-great-grandfather started it when he and his men took her daughter. And you killed him. That they did. And a century later, your grandfather felt like wasting his gifts by coming here and avenging his grandfather. You're a bloody Viking with Nifl blood, and you lot would rather come here than die in the Glasswald. You could live like kings since the Avramites didn't care one whit about your kind, but instead you have to drudge up this grudge and get innocent people killed along the way. Do you plan on boring me to death, Hjorvate? Stanger sneered. No, merely distract you long enough. Skaha emerged from the fold in the veil between the worlds. Since your family seems determined to revisit my domain over and over, I'm going to let you stay. Stanger lurched forward, stumbling when his left foot refused to leave the riverbed. His gaze swept through clear flowing water, seeking a snare holding him fast. He planted his right foot in the stony bottom of the river and pushed. He tried to shift his stance, but now his right foot wouldn't budge. Whatever is this? Stanger bellowed. Free me, bitch! Skaha pointed to the woman perched on the flat stone out of the water. You brought the witch, but her magic will not avail you. Around Dune of Scythe, I control the flow of time. Perhaps you've heard of Tirnanog. Since you keep coming back, I'll let you stay forever. Necton kept his face neutral. It would be better to kill them in his opinion, but her ladyship sometimes favored theatrics. Plus, like his predecessors, Stanger carried a gift that turned metal from his skin. His great-great-grandfather only was proof against iron, and his grandfather all save for silver, gold, and lead. Necton carried an antler point dagger and napstone arrows to do the deed. Help me! Use your magic! Stanger reached towards the woman, but she recoiled away as far as the flat stone will allow. My threat stands which. Mutter a syllable and I'll bury an arrow in your throat. The threat curdled in Necton's throat. Witch or not, he hated threatening women. Stanger flailed at the water with his sword. Fight me as a man, you misbegotten wight! Quit hiding behind the hoard of witch's skirts! You expect me to release you after something like that? Skaha held out a hand and slowly lowered it. In the river, Stanger sank, inch by inch, the water going from mid-calf to above his knees. Ostelman, at least give me a clean death. Stanger howled, his cries echoing off the hills. That's the beauty of it, Skaha stated. The cycle of death ends. As you live, no descendant shall receive the spark of your bloodline's celestial blood gifts. No more long-lived Northmen tossing their lives away on my account. Stanger turned his red-eyed gaze towards his companion. Eleva, do something! My soul is still. I cannot even end my own life. If your runes of villains cannot free me, take a stone and bash my head in. Eleva shook her head, watching in silent horror as Stanger sank to his waist. Necton's fingers itched to pull back the stone-tipped arrow, but he held. Skaha claimed freezing Stanger in the River of Time would keep his Nephilim gift, or as the Northmen called it, Jotun, from jumping to a descendant. Eleva dared to step closer as the water reached halfway up Stanger's chest. I'm sorry, I know no bindings to fight such power. Stanger lurched, snagging Eleva's ankle in his grip. You have to help me. The witch screamed, babbling rapid-fire in language Necton did not understand. Finish? Somewhat? It did not matter. There was no cadence of spellcraft, just sheer panic, as Stanger dragged her halfway off her flat stone refuge. Eleva scrambled to find purchase on the smooth rock surface with one hand, while she yanked a gleaming copper-bladed dagger from her belt. She stabbed and slashed with a knife, to no avail, as the weapon failed to bite into Stanger's skin. Stanger hauled her the rest of the way into the water as it reached his armpits. Eleva screamed and splashed, dropping the knife that clawed Stanger's arm through his tunic and halberd. No, no, no! Eleva wailed, thrashing and twisting, her cries cut off when her head dipped below the surface. Stanger glared at Necton. Coward, he uttered as his mouth submerged. They both knew Stanger would not drown. It would be a mercy. Eleva gasped for air, fighting the inexorable pull as Stanger sank. She pleaded in their own tongue, but the Northman kept his eyes fixed on Necton. In another minute, both Stanger and Eleva vanished below the surface. Necton shuddered. Give me a clean death over whatever awaited them under the river. Why so squeamish, huntsman? Skaha turned her back to the river, marching toward Duno's Scythe, perched on the hill in the distance. His own obsession for vengeance brought this about. Stanger and his skin brought their feud from the Dunwell to our doorstep. If they'd remained in the mortal world, we'd have not have crossed paths, let alone swords. Necton fell into step beside the warrior matriarch of Duno's Scythe. I've already questioned you over the past, what has it been, 4 centuries? But this seemed a bit excessive. Couldn't I have just dunked them and been done with it instead of the whole ordeal? Perhaps, but manipulating the flow of the River of Time is no simple task, even in my own domain. It takes concentration and effort, more than a quick plunge. Besides, they knew the secret of not only reaching the glass wall from the mundane world, they beelined straight for Duno's Scythe. Even among the various folk, I keep my domain's location obscured, or else I'd be inundated in would-be heroes, all hoping to follow the path of Cuchulainn. Necton snorted. As well as it ended for him, you'd think people would be the wiser. Skaha shook her head. They hear tales of glory and skip over the trials and bitter ends. Necton glanced back at the stony river. Bitter ends indeed.
Bravo, bravo. I would listen to a book that you read. I would listen to your audiobook. It was not only did you do the accents pretty well, you went in and out pretty seamlessly. So good job. And we have agreement in the crowd. Now, speaking of you somewhat recently been gone over to Scotland, right?
That's right. This last summer.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. I made fun of you for that picture. Yeah.
You can make fun all you want.
Hey, yeah. No. But now with the last name Osborne, I'm assuming there's you're of some descendancy from that area, or am I wrong?
The Osborne, as far as we can tell, is either English or Irish through English.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a large Scottish component in my family. And we didn't actually find out about this until fairly recently. I did the whole, Ancestry.com.
Mhm.
and because my mother was adopted, so we didn't know any of the history really on her side of the family. And then once she passed, my sister and I both did Ancestry.com, and we also got in touch with, or actually, she got in touch with our cousin from my mother's birth family. And so we discovered that we have a lot of Irish and Scottish on that side of the family.
Okay.
So
Now,
if you read the numbers on Ancestry.com, I'm 38% Scottish.
okay. But you found that out after you started writing the books.
Yeah. We'd suspected an Irish component because we knew, we knew two of the surnames on my mom's side. And it turns out one we thought was Irish was actually German, and it had been changed over time. But the other one was Irish. And then again, like, as you get further back, you get a lot of Scottish in there. There's also some Irish on my dad's side. And I suspect one of the lines at least is Scottish there, probably through the various transplants back in the colonial times, because it's a Fraser. So that's probably Clan Fraser. And then on my mom's side, I think it's my great grandfather is a Yule from Clan Buchanan. So
yeah, for those of you who are wondering what picture I am referring to when I'm making fun of Jon, he's got the better of the deal, of course. Watch there's a previous episode with he and Mark, and I pulled the picture up, and there's a lovely young lady that I'm assuming he met on the trip, and she's planting one right on his face, and he wouldn't give me much detail on it, but I still made fun of him for it. But go check out the
questions.
Well, you posted it up.
Who is she? Who is she?
Like,
cool your jets. I'm not getting married or anything. She's just
and quite an attractive lady.
Yeah.
Go watch that episode. We're not gonna rehash that here. But so what made you pick, Celtic and all? I mean, does that just come from your gaming or from your heritage, or what made you go that route?
Oh, let's see. Part of it was from the gaming, because most D&D nerds get into mythology of various sorts, and then also from my pagan background. So I've been in various pagan groups, and I've actually had a druid grove for about 10 years. So I become through my Irish mythology interest that way mostly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nick wants to hit up those audiobooks. Either that or he wants to drive a car. I don't know. Oh no, he corrects himself. Okay.
I don't know, Nick. If you can get Audi to give you a car in exchange for putting it in a book, I'd say that's a sweet deal.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. So how did you come up with the characters? Why did you? Is there any of yourself in the books, or what made you choose the characters that you chose?
Let's see. I wouldn't say there is a lot of myself in Liam, other than the fact that the whole druid aspect, and the small town Illinois connection, because my grandparents were my mom's side is from a small town in Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where a lot of that background comes from. In fact, Liam's house is my great uncle and great aunt's house on my mom's side, and they had a farm outside of Macomb, Illinois.
Mm.
And so I spent several summer days there, and so I can see that house in my head. And but Liam himself is very different from me. Liam is not a geek. He's a lot smarter than me. And he's basically started as just that basic idea of, okay, I want someone who's a druid living in a small town, and has this supernatural connection. And the whole scene in the bookstore, hit me. I've never worked in a bookstore. I worked retail, but never a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
So he starts off working in a bookstore, and just that whole scene hit me where Pixel, the Welsh fairy, makes contact with him in that bookstore. Aaron was just spun up out of whole cloth, because I knew that I wanted a single mother with a military background. Obviously that's nothing like me. And I wanted her to be badass without falling too deeply into the action girl trope.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I am guilty of dabbling in that. Whiskey is a good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
The Bjorn's Berserkers books. But Erin, is I mean, she's a badass, but she's not action girl. She doesn't like run around with explosions, shooting stuff up, things like that. I mean, she can shoot a gun, she can kick ass.
Mm-hmm.
Military background, and of course, there's that whole supernatural warrior heritage. But a big part of the story in book, especially book 2, is she starts off, she's thinking, well, she's pretty tough, and they're like, oh no, Les, you're just scratching the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And they send her to Skaha, and it's going to be 7 years her time under tutelage of this demigoddess of battle who trained Ku Chulainn. And so, she gets there and she finds out, oh wait, she doesn't know as much as she thinks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long way to go.
Well, some other people like whiskey as well.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, Nick. So, going back to the Audi topic, maybe a little Rapist car in the book cover. That would be pretty sweet. There's some good advertising there. Let's see.
Would be
Dragon skin that has to mark. Yeah, I would say that'd be a cool looking car. So what is this? But Whiskey has training her character makes sense, and I love her. Okay. Yes. So now how in like Shazam there is you've got Billy, who's he's just a kid, he's not strong, he's not really fast or anything like this, and he becomes this basically god type character. Do you ever kind of maybe do that to yourself in your books or anything like that, like with Bjorn or anything like that, just because he's such a large character?
I think one of the important things is when you're writing a character is to give them flaws. It's important. I think it's important for characters to lose. I think, in fact, in the book Bjorn, he gets his ass kicked a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, I think you learn a lot more by losing than winning.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I was in school in Chicago as a kid, I got my ass kicked by the neighborhood bully.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow out of that, we ended up becoming friends, and he taught me to fight.
That's awesome.
But so like that so there's a little bit of that, like when Bjorn gets his ass kicked by the school bully and his friends, there's a little bit of a flashback to that bit in Chicago.
So are there any other like little nuggets like that, little Easter eggs that are in the Milesian Accords, that maybe come from your life or anything like that?
Wow.
I know the house.
Yeah, the house. I'm trying to think because with like if I've snuck things in with the other characters. Actually, Tim, Aaron's son, I identify a little bit with, because I know what it's like to be the smart weird kid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I write from that standpoint. I've been accused of inserting one of my other friends in the book. In fact, someone where I and a friend of mine worked, and they're like, "Hey, does he points at her and goes, does she know she's Susan?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, no, she's not Susan, but I could see where someone could, that knew us and had read the books, because it's a scientist that I work supporting Eli Lilly, which is a pharmaceutical company.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I was working on site at their downtown campus, and there's a scientist there who was also a reader. And so yeah, he's like, he pointed at my friend. He's like, yeah, she's Susan. And I'm like, well, no, but I could see where you would think that, because Liam has this friend that's a woman, and they're really good friends, but there's nothing romantic between them.
So I had a question and I lost it. Anyway, so where are you? Oh no, let's talk about gaming. So you're a big gamer. You're a game master, and so how do you get that honor? Because anytime I have a show with you, I put Game Master underneath your name and everything. So how do you become a game master?
So it started off back when I was 13. I, for some reason, just decided that I wanted to play Dungeons and Dragons. I rode my bike to Zehrs, which is like a department store. Back then, it doesn't exist anymore. Bought the box set of Dungeons and Dragons, took it home, read it, taught myself how to play, and then got my friends over, because to play Dungeons and Dragons, you need friends to play. And since I was the one that knew the rules and had the set, I was a dungeon master.
Mm-hmm. And then
that just started a trend from there. I mean, I've played in other people's games, and I enjoy doing that. But by default, I tend to be the dungeon master.
Yeah.
Or game master, depending on system, because I play a lot of systems besides D&D.
And so let's use this as a segue, because you are creating a game.
Right. Well, we're creating a source book,
mm-hmm.
a gaming source book for the Four Horsemen universe called Rules of Engagement, and it uses the Savage World system, which is not Dungeons and Dragons, and it's a whole different game engine.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lot more flexible and less granular, that works well, and it's designed as kind of a generic game engine that you can use in a bunch of different genres. So this book doesn't have the Savage World rules. It has the specialized rules for the Four Horsemen universe, and then a ton of background information. Like, you find out a ton about the various aliens and stuff in here. There's a whole chapter breaking down devoted to Caspers. So you see every iteration of the Casper from Mark 1 on.
Very cool. So, but this you're still working on this, right? It's
right. So, first of all, a couple of things I learned. One is that there's a reason why most of these kinds of source books have big teams working on them. It's a lot of work, more work than Mark and I anticipated. And then we had the one I've talked about this before, like how the Kickstarter did so well, it doubled the size of the book. So I went from having it half done to about a quarter done. And then this past year was a real, for lack of a better term, ass kicker. Mark had to go back on the road, working a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
My job, when the pandemic hit, turned pear-shaped, because I work in pharmaceutical logistics.
Mm-hmm.
And then my sister passed away this summer. And so that really took the wind out of our sails, so to speak. However, Mark's now working at home. I'm done with all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the book out. So I'm now throwing myself into getting the rest of the text for Rules of Engagement cranked out, so we can go into layout. Then we can, once it's in the layouts, then we can tweak it a little bit. I do still need to write the DEPIC booklet, because I made a mistake of saying, hey, if you pledge this much, I would put in a little supplement for how to do playable DEPIC.
Mm-hmm.
And made that number higher.
Yeah, you kind of dig that hole for yourself. So speaking of, so you're an author. You're a fairly prolific author, as we've been talking about, and you have a full grown ass job.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get it all done? What's your how do you fit it in?
To be honest, I'm not as good at it as some of my peers. Like, there's people like Chris Kennedy, Nick Steverson. I mean, basically, all my other CKP authors seem like they can like just crank stuff out. I know like he and Melissa Olthoff, and I'm sorry if I just mangled your name, Melissa. They have these things where, okay, well, you're going to do 2,000 words. Well, I'm going to do 25 words. Oh, I'm going to do 3,000 words. And they're just like cranking it out. I know that Marissa and Chris had a similar kind of thing going on.
Yeah, that was a competition. No. He says, "Oh no, you didn't," and then go and just keep on going.
Right. And so when Mark and I started on Caveat Emptor, that was kind of fun because we started bouncing stuff back and forth. But we had to like kind of shelve that because it's like, okay, we need to get the game done first. So my plan is to hammer out the game text, then get back to Caveat Emptor, which is, I want to say we've got 25 or 30,000 words in it. And when we were cooking on it, we were making good progress. And then also knock out Bifrost Down, which has, I want to say, about 25,000 words in it.
See, that's what I'm talking about. You got so many projects going.
Well, that's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. Well, but plus being a grown up with a job, it amazes me that any of y'all can get the books out that y'all get out, but I guess when you're passionate about it, it's not really work, but it's still work.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So Jon, where can people find you out in the wild? Where are you going to be?
All right. So I will be actually this weekend coming up. I'll be at Confinement in Lebanon, Tennessee, which is a relatively new, nice little convention I've heard really good things about. So this will be my first year there. Next month, I will be at Fantasy, which is like the big one for the 4HU. We have a large fan club presence. I'll run, it's a tradition, I run a rules of engagement session there. And we'll see, what kind of mayhem people can get up to as they suit up their Caspers and grab their dice. I still think one of the most horrific things I ever heard in a game occurred there, where the players fought some Zool and they had to get past a checkpoint. One of the players asked, "Can I skin a Zool and wear it as a disguise?" And I stopped. I'm like, "That's creative, but also horrible. No, you cannot wear the Zool."
We don't wear people.
Exactly.
Well, I'll be seeing you at Fantasy most likely.
Awesome.
And I'll have a drink hopefully be able to have a drink with you by then. So what else after Fantasy? Where else?
Then there's a local gaming convention called HoosierCon, and they've been on hiatus since the whole pandemic hit. So it's been 2-3 years. I mean, it feels like it's March 1027th of 2020 still.
Yeah.
But they're going back live, and this was just announced. So that's one of my hometown conventions. I'll be at LibertyCon, which CKP has a big presence at it. Well, and then Gen Con is not a working convention for me. But if you're going to Gen Con, hit me up, grab a beer or something. I go there to game. People are always like, "Well, don't you want to get like a booth or a table or something like that?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to be stuck at a booth during Gen Con."
Yeah, you go to have fun.
I go to have fun. I have people that I only see there that I've known for years. So yeah, and then I'll probably Dragon Con, and then Factory Con, of course.
Always a good time. I love Factory Con. It's old home. We could for those of you who don't know, Factory Con is what it started out as the fiscal year end kind of get together for all the authors and all that stuff, and then Chris moved to North Carolina, and then he started holding it at this KOA that's by his place, and so it has become a much bigger deal. And there's, we invite fans to come, and there's book signings, and we have activities, lots of food, too much food, lots of
so much food,
uh,
so much
yeah.
food. And the hashtag for me at FactoryCon is Bring Oz Beer.
Yes.
Last year I came home with 37 bottles of beer.
We gave you something. What did we give you?
Oh, I want to say it was a chocolate stout, maybe.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes. So we take that that hashtag very seriously, and we bring Oz beer, and and as you can tell, there's a little bit of drinking that goes on there. There's a fishing trip. Yeah, there's a fishing trip. It's a good time, and you might not be able to go this year because I think they're all full up now. But for next the following year, get on there quick because
quick. I mean, we take out a good chunk of the KOA campground. Yeah, I mean, you can always try seeing if there's been any cancellations or anything that you can jump on.
No, people usually sign up for the following year as they're leaving. So
that's what I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big baby. I stay in a cabin,
Those cabins are pretty sweet. I like those. Yeah. No, so and let's not forget to drive people back to your socials. You can catch Jon at jonosborne.com.
Osborne. Got to remember the R.
Oh, that's right, because I was looking up stuff for you, and I got so many Jon Osbornes.
Yeah, there is a lot of Jon Osbornes. Fun fact, Ozzy Osbourne's real name is Jon Osborne.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There are 2 other Jon Osbornes in my company, and when I started supporting Lily, there were also 2 more Jon Osbornes working at Lily. So there was I was getting email from all over the place. I got invited to some like meeting in Belgium, and I'm like, I would really love to go, but I don't think I'm the Jon Osborne you're looking for.
Yeah. I would not have thought. I mean, Jon's a fairly common name, but that combination, I wouldn't have thought it would have been that common. But yeah, I figured that out when I was doing research.
Yeah, I like to say that if I do really good, I'll get to add a second R, like George R. Martin.
All right, well, you heard it here. When you become rich and famous, we'll be adding some letters to your name.
I have enough money to buy that castle in Scotland.
There you go. Is that the dream? Is that where you want to go?
Oh yeah, I'm determined to go back to Scotland. I'm kind of scheming in my head to see if there's a way I could swing maybe a month there.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to get say a flat in Edinburgh, and then day trip out of it. We'll see. I saw a lovely little town that I could retire to because the town's only about 4 or 5 blocks long, but they have town-wide Wi-Fi, and I'm on the main strip there, and I can see a Tesco, which is their grocery store, a bakery, a pub, and a comic book store.
It's not a bad spot.
I'm like, shit, I could retire here.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing is if you go spend a month over there, we might not see you again. We have to come visit you over there. And people like your life goals. Let's see. We can also now if people want to communicate with you, what's the best place?
There's my Facebook author profile, Jon R. Facebook, Jon R. Osborne. I tend to be really quick about getting back to messages on there. If I'm working my day job, it might be a little slower. Depends if I can sneak in on my lunch break or something like that, or while I'm waiting for a process to run. But my bosses aren't listening. But yeah, that's a good way to get a hold of me. I've had some people there's a contact link on my web page. You can send me a message. If you don't want to do Facebook for some reason, I know there's a few people out there that don't do Facebook. I'm on Instagram. That's mostly pictures of beer.
So it's not a strictly author Instagram.
No. It's this is an interesting beer. I'm going to post this on Instagram.
So do you go looking for weird beers or interesting beers
Oh
or what
yeah,
have you?
yeah. I spend more time, like when I go to like the grocery store or something like that. I
Hmm.
spend more time in the beer section than like the rest of the store combined.
Yeah.
I like to go to. There's a liquor store near me that I call the Treasure Hunt liquor store. Um, I'm pretty sure that no one actually merchandises there. They just like put the bottles up on the shelves at random,
Hmm.
and so you have to like go and hunt and search because you'll find they don't have like all this stuff by one brewery together. It's like, oh well, oh, that came in Tuesday. Yeah, there's a spot down there. Put it down there.
Hmm.
No,
Oh, so good luck. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I found all sorts of obscure beers there.
Well, we that chocolate stout that we gave you, we found at a place. Not it doesn't quite sound the same, but there was no actual like mainstream brands there. It was all just like
Awesome.
off brands and stuff. And I got, so I'm not a beer drinker, but I like sour beers. And because if you get a good one, it doesn't taste like much like beer. I know that's offensive to a lot of people, but and I found a good sour beer here in Charleston, down the road from us, and I ordered it, and it came out, and it was actually green, and I was like, what the hell did I do? And it was awesome. It was really really good, but it was a local brewery. They made it themselves. I don't know if it's food dye or whatever they put in it. I might get cancer later, but it was pretty good.
Sour beer or something, or
Is it what?
apple sour or something like that.
Maybe I'd have to find out and let you know.
For the green.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's some kind of food coloring, but it was good. I enjoyed it. But typically, if I'm a uh, hard liquor, if it's brown, I'm down kind of guy. And tequilas. Well, just about anything. I've recently discovered gin that I enjoy gin. So
Ooh, I can't.
yeah, I know that's offensive too. I'm a
Well,
weirdo when it comes to
I have
drinking.
I have a childhood trauma with gin. We'll say
Mine's with vodka.
my very first drunk sick was gin,
Yeah.
and my family owned a race car, and so I got my very first drunk sick on a Saturday night, and Sunday morning was time to go to the drag strip,
Hmm.
and I had to have my very first hangover in the pits with 100 other race cars.
Ooh.
And I just like curled up in the backseat of the tow car and I wanted to die. I was so miserable. My mother didn't even like keep me grounded.
Hmm.
And I didn't touch alcohol for like at least a year. And I still, don't drink gin.
How old were you?
Like 15.
Oh yeah. And plus, that's loud too, man. You.
Oh yeah. And of course, they had like the jet semi there and the rocket
Mhm.
cars, because this direction we have these various guest, acts come in and it's like, oh yeah.
Oh, I think that's a good one to go out on. So for all of you who are still here or are here in the future watching us, the recorded version, go get your copy. Oh, wrong one.
You can buy copies of those too.
You can buy that too. But what we're here for is the Hunting the Hart, which is book 5, and the Milesian Accords. The link to it is the first comment in the comment section of this video. And just in case you're wondering, I have it here too. If you want to furiously pause the video and copy this down. Otherwise, you can just copy and paste it from the first comment in the comment section. And Jon, this series sounds awesome. I love urban fantasy, and I love what ifs, and the folklore that you've put in it sounds awesome. I'm excited to read it, and I think other people are too. And good job on you, sir. I think you got yourself a winner. Well, you're 5 books in. You must be doing something right.
Yeah.
So.
And there will be more.
So well, before we leave, let's talk about that. So what are the plans, or do we have plans?
Well, there's going to be a book 6
Mhm.
that will. So I kind of split the gang up in books 4 and 5,
Mhm.
and book 6 we'll see some of those characters come back together because there's a wedding in the works, and of course in the world of the Milesian Accords, that's just going to go totally smooth when you have the high druid of the mundane world, where marrying a Welsh fairy, and there's people with grudges, and some of those people aren't mortal. Yeah, nothing's gonna to get complicated there. But in the short stories I've been doing anthologies, I've been introducing another cast of characters. I kind of call them Team Peoria, because we're seeing new champions pop up in the world. I did not all steal this idea from Buffy the Vampire Slayer when she made all the Slayers. Not at all. It was not at all an inspiration. But yeah, so we're seeing some characters pop up in what I call Team Peoria, and I would like to do a book with them, and we'll see where that goes.
Awesome. Do you foresee any offshoots or anything like that, spin-offs or anything?
Oh yeah, well, the Team Peoria thing will be a spin-off. I've put together a reader's Bible in case I run into authors that are interested in maybe developing a piece of the world.
Awesome. Oh, that's exciting. Awesome. All right. Well, before we leave, let's pay the bills again. Oh, actually, let's.
Cheryl, and yes, Grace. Grace is the champion on Team Peoria.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh yeah, well, we've got some fans watching. They know more than I do. But I am excited to read these books. I'm a big fan of this genre, and I'm excited to see CKP doing more of it, and happy for you that 5 books in, man. That's pretty sweet deal. But before we go, some other want to bring your attention to some other podcasts that we have on the CKP YouTube channel. You can find the latest episode of Future Books hosted by Randall Willis on there. This is brought to you by our good buddy Ian Malone with Shark Flight Media. If you want to know what's new in the world of CKP, check out this podcast. They talk about, of course, this is the February edition, and they're talking to John Sears about his latest book, which is out now. So go check that out. In addition to that, some YouTube channels I like to promote are our good buddies. Let's see. Of course, little nepotism here, Marisa Wolf. We're going to be building that YouTube channel up here shortly. She's going to be doing some more videos. We've got some of her Valkyrie's videos on there, a book launch. She's going to be doing some more author content on there. Speaking of author content, we've got Casey Zell, the Writer Life. She does kind of a video vlog. She does interviews on there, talks about how she writes. She brings on other authors and talk about how they write, and talking about their projects. It's a very interesting channel. Check that out. And of course, our good buddies at World Maker Books, Joy and Mark, are putting out content there right now. What are they reading right now?
Blood in the Water.
Yeah.
No, Black and White.
Black and White. So they're reading Black and White. They've their each podcast is a couple chapters, and they're going through some of Mark Wandry's older books. It's kind of like an audio accompaniment to the actual books, and I invite you all to check that out. And of course, for all your literary needs, go to chriskennedypublishing.com, sign up for the newsletter, get all your information from there. Of course, go to Jon's website, sign up for his newsletter so you can keep up with all his latest and greatest. It sounds like he's got a lot on the fire, so you'll be able to hear about those things before anybody else. And with that, I think that'll do it. Jon, congratulations on book number 5. Thank you for coming on. You're always welcome. Of course, this is like your 3rd or 4th time being on the show, but it's your first time by yourself, and it was great to talk to you on your own for once. And I even got to hear you do some voices, so that's always always a plus. And people, if y'all get to see Jon at panels and stuff, and he's doing a character, it's delightful. Just go check it out. It's a good time. And he's always a good drinking buddy. And like I said, anytime you want to come on, especially if you've got some good news like a new book or something come out, or if you just want to shoot the shit, come on. So with that, I want to thank everybody for watching now and in the future, and we will catch you next time.